Are we able to hear each other in the chat? All right, let's see. We look like we're on air. We look like we're on air, but at the same time, it looks like we're not hearing things clearly on my side. So, can you hear me? Can you hear me out there? Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. All right. All right, that's a miracle. It's really weird. Welcome, 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 everybody, to I know a few late episodes of All for Success, trying to get the morning started off here. And I tell you, I tried to do some new type of, what do you call it, streaming type platforms. I'm trying to work with some newer equipment, things like that. And although I may try, it is definitely giving me a little bit of difficulty along the way. I have no idea why. I guess it's just one of those fluky things, like you're going to work with it, and then one day you work with it, it works well, the next day it doesn't. Okay, but anyway, I want to let everyone know this is All for Success. We're going to start the year off 2026 with a little bit of rambling and scuffling and trying to get ourselves together. I thank you so much for bearing with me. Listen, I'm a little late for the early morning churchgoers in my area. So if you're still getting ready for church, or if that's where you go in the Sunday morning, or if you're out exercising, whichever way you choose to get yourself back in the flow, I want you to know that I am here to support you in that. Now, All for Success, of course, I do this intro almost every time just to let people know I'm a parent of adult children, and I look at the lives of Harry and Meghan through that lens. So sometimes I'm not extremely detailed on the day-to-day things that are happening in and around them, but I'm kind of casting an overall vision like a parent would from the sidelines of the things that are interesting to them and the things that kind of bring their attention, right? You know how it is. Is mom paying attention to what's going on? Or does she know what's happening in my life? That's kind of the way I approach my thoughts and my attitude towards all things Duke and Duchess of Sussex. That is Harry and Meghan, or Prince Harry and his lovely wife. And then, of course, the children are a beautiful, beautiful addition. And oh my gosh, how they have grown over time. Can you believe it? These two little babies are standing up now, walking, talking, riding bikes, and doing things. And I cannot believe how fast time has gone. What about you? So let's see. What I first want to do is to say thank you so much for those of you who are here already. Oh, look, I see there is Lorna Williams is in the chat already. Thank you. Happy New Year to you as well. Thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate the support of the Super Squatties. This year I vow to learn a little bit more about monetizing, and I hope it doesn't drive people away. I'm hoping that it will grow the channel. I'm learning a little bit. I'm slow, okay? I'm slow to it. Plus, often I don't want to do a lot of the checks and balances to be ready for monetization. There are a lot of like rules you have to follow, and I'm a little slow on the uptake, but I'm excited to do a little bit of learning about that. Now, Lorna Williams, I thank you so much again for being here. So listen, appreciate that you can hear me. I did an entire chat not long ago, and the volume was so low that even when I replayed it myself, I couldn't hear what was going on. And you got to admit, that was nuts. But I did try my best. All right, folks, here's what you're going to do. You're going to get out there. If you're exercising, go ahead and keep the headphones on while I'm chit-chatting. For those of you who are deciding you're going to sit down and have a cup of coffee, go ahead and get that ready. Tea is also acceptable. And if you're just sitting around doing some errands or doing a few tasks, keeping your hands moving, you can keep your hands moving while this chat is on. Don't forget that. I'm trying to repeat things that my grandmother used to say. She said, it's okay to sit down and, watch TV or listen to the radio, but she said your hands should still be working. And I must say, I have not done that and kept up with that well. In that light, here's what I would like to do. I would like to say that it would appear that Megan, on the other hand, is the type of young lady who has been able to keep that type of attitude going, right? She has been the type of person that stays busy. She keeps her hands moving. She has ideas and she has thoughts and she has plans. She seems to have goals in life. And as an inspiration to all of us, we should make a move, take a step, and proceed to work through those goals. What happens if we do something and we need to go back and reevaluate it, like me here with the podcast? Maybe you need to take a pause, take a moment, take a break, and restructure, right? So if you have to do that, that's okay. That's what I mean as far as an inspiration. Prince Harry, kind of in a similar vein. As a young man, he has a lot of things that he would like to do, a lot of ideas that he would like to see develop. He's also a very active young man. He really seems to enjoy outdoor activities. I mean, he plays polo, he surfs, or he's learning to surf. He's getting pretty good at it. He likes to deep sea dive, which was amazing. I did not realize he scuba dived as much as he did. So, with that being said, he also enjoys watching sports. He watches his friends who play soccer. He watches all of his friends who are participants in, of course, things like football. I say football, he says soccer. And then the other sports that people are involved in. So he's an outdoors kind of guy. He appears to be sort of a handy type of guy, even though he didn't grow up, for example, working on a construction site. But he seems to be that kind of guy, that kind of man that likes to get out and about and participate in things and be active, right? So here's what we can draw from them. We too should be active. If you have goals or you have something you want to try, take it from someone who is a little bit more than middle aged now. Even if you're doing it with baby steps, even if you're doing it in a very, what I call infant manner, even if you're doing something at an infant manner, for example, me here on this YouTube chat line, I'm in the YouTube chat world, but I'm doing it totally at a beginner level, right? And I am struggling to advance, but I'm going to continue to look into things that I can do to improve. Why? Because I enjoy it. So I hope you enjoy listening to me go on and on about how I feel about life in general. Now, with 2026 on board, folks, we might have many changes coming up. It depends on where you are in your world. This may be the year that you're going to double up your workload, that you might be getting ready to perform some additional duties at your job, or this may be, in some people's case, as they start to prepare for exiting their work role. For me, I'm kind of in that lane. I am beginning to merge into what is the retirement lane from the standard workplace. What that means to me is I may not work in the standard box of, you get up, you go to work early in the morning, Monday through Friday, you do your thing. and that I may move into other types of work. Hopefully, I will be able to do a little bit more volunteering myself. For those who enjoy that, or if you enjoy seeing the results of that, that can be very taxing. It can take a lot out of you. And believe it or not, it is definitely something that I don't want to say it's a luxury to be helpful, but it does require participating with if you have a regular workload, then it requires you to add to your workload. So just imagine, for example, that you work a regular job 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. If you also are going to volunteer and help and do service work, that means you're going to be somewhere after work, probably 3 to 4 hours, or at least your weekends are definitely going to be dedicated to that. With that in mind, that's why we have to think about how our faves, right, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, how they operate. The world that they are existing in is one where they perform assistance to people, services, and they grow charities. Now, that's a business in and of itself. And what it does is it definitely makes proud their mothers. It warms the hearts of those mothers to see their children continue to participate in activities that help others. It is, unfortunately, a little bit sad in our world, in our existence, that it is required of us to be helpful to people, because in our existence, some people will always need help, right? And it's just a turn of a few levers that moves us from the position of being able to help someone to the position of needing that help. It is very often that these things go hand in hand. That often you may believe, oh, well, I'm here to help someone. And then just like that, without any warning, you might become the person who receives the assistance. It's unfortunate, but that is the way our world operates. Often it is unkind, right? And it is a remarkable part of the industry that there are people who develop charities or develop working groups that provide minor services or draw attention to those who are in need. And of course, who better to be in that position than the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, right? That is what they do. It's what they appear to be called to do. And it is the realm in which they prefer to exist and to operate. So I am here to continue the prayers of their mothers and to continue the prayers of all mothers, because you want to support your children in the things that they do, especially when what they do is good and in service of others. Am I right? Now, I'd already mentioned that you guys need to get out there and exercise if you haven't. I did go on my walk this morning, and I must say I am tired, but I wanted to make sure I threw that out there again, because if you're not out and exercising and you're at the age that I'm at, you're going to regret it. Okay? So if you can, remember, keep that body moving. That's what we need to do. So what we're doing is we're looking back over the years at all of the things that the faves have been doing, the things they've participated in. They've attended baseball. They attended baseball games. They attended polo matches. They did things in service of the young people's group that is in the UK, Little Soldiers or something like that Harry generally goes over annually to participate in. Then you had the food groups, World Kitchen, which is one of Megan's largest interests, and then, of course, the IT driven type of charities that they work with that bring attention to the difficulty in navigating the online space. That is, all of those people who are working to try to maintain cyber intellect and cyber safety online, because it is a very dangerous space to operate in if you are not aware of how much in that space can be manipulated, challenged, changed, and how much you expose yourself to the rest of the world by simply being online. I have no illusion, for example, that my presence online, even as a person who comes on and does a periodic chat cast, right? Who does a periodic little bit of interaction online. And I often make comments in other people's podcasts. Sometimes I make a comment that might be a little tough, right? Like I say, I always make my comments as if I'm a parent scolding people if I don't appreciate what they say. But just know that that interaction in the online space is trackable, traceable, because you are accountable online just like you would be in real life for some things. And I know that's a difficult thought to get across to some people, because they believe often that if they have a made-up name and a made-up persona, that they can just type in whatever they want to type in, say whatever they want to say, and they believe that somehow the rest of the world is not going to hold you, the human being behind it, responsible for what you said or for what you typed in that online space. So just like Harry and Meghan, I want to emphasize that in the cyber/online spaces, we can do and say as we please, but just be aware you have to also be responsible for it, right? So anyway, those are the many features, charities, and many endeavors that these people had online, and I'm still going to wave my hand and I'm going to cheer them onward, because I think they are doing a great job. Now, here's something that blew the lid off. These things are happening so fast, I can't keep up with them. I was just reading an article, and this was probably early in December, and all of a sudden, what happens? Harry shows up in Aspen to a polo match. Now, of course, there was no real lead up to this. It wasn't an announcement. Hey, Harry's going to go to play polo somewhere. Why? Because he was simply there to go and support his friends who play polo. And it was a charity that perhaps they all support. After all, the polo matches, which were a great charity fundraiser for the previous charity that he worked with, Santa Bale, they still do these charity events for other things, right? And so that's what they did. Now, the story goes that he was just there to watch and enjoy, sneaking away from the family to have some dude time, guys will be guys, right? And he's up there, and one of the players who would normally have played was unable to attend and unable to be there. And you know what they did? They said, well, hey, Harry, you're here. Why don't you take his place? Because if you all remember, by watching the documentary about polo, which if you didn't, go back right now and watch that documentary, there is a certain number of people who play. And I think it's 5 or 6. I believe it's 5. But they need X number of players to play, right? And so Harry stepped in for the person who was absent out of the blue. And what did that do? That hit the newspapers. The good newspapers as well as the bad, right? Because when Harry travels, probably sometimes just as himself, he travels as who? Often he may have a name that is listed on paperwork as kind of incognito, but it didn't matter because one of the announcers announced him as playing as Harry Wales. Well, that alone sent flares and flags up the UK flagpoles, and they had to run out immediately and go on and on about the fact that the name mentioned was Harry Wales, and oh my God, how dare you, But that was a common tactic for the royal family members as they travel to use a name that was kind of like the first name of something and the second name of a title or whatever, or a region, so that they wouldn't be hounded, followed, and lunged after. But that being said, everyone who was in and around, of course, they understood who that was going to be, right? And so it was just kind of a funny moment. But he got to play polo, which is what he likes to do anyway. And everyone seemed to have enjoyed the moment. Of course, on the other side of the water, this typically made them a little bit tense, right? They got a little bit intense and a little bit uptight. Why? Because he's enjoying himself, and he appears to be guilt-free that he's enjoying himself. What does the UK want? The UK media machine? Well, they want him to feel guilt about being happy. Matter of fact, what they want more than that, I'm getting interruptions. What they want more than that is for him not to be able to enjoy his life here on the West Side. But he will not do it. Playing polo is what he likes, and playing polo is what he did. Yes? Let's get right down to it. Now, here's what's happening also in the UK world as we look at 2025 closing out and 2026 coming in. There appear to be more discussions, more calls, if you will, for the royal family in its entirety to simply abdicate away. Because of course, any of you that have been following things that have been going on, then you know that we also have stories of how the royal family trying to navigate this Prince Andrew scandal / not scandal / we're going to continue to embrace him / we're going to reprimand and put him aside situation and show is drawing the attention of many people in the media landscape. Now, here's what they're finding. They're finding that some people are saying the monarchy as an institution is not necessary and they need to get rid of it. Then they're having folks that would just like to say, all of these people are on the taxpayer rolls, but what is it that their function actually serves? Because a lot of people in the background do not realize, at least in the way that these countries are organized, they may not understand how these families, and it's not just the Windsors, how they are intertwined in the actual functioning of the entire government system and how it funnels out into the lives of the regular day-to-day people. People are beginning to see a little bit more behind the curtain here in the United States as to how things actually used to operate. A lot of people used to just simply repeat certain lines, in a political way. People will repeat certain mentalities. For example, they'll say things like, we don't need a government, or we don't need the government, or we don't need this particular office, no one needs to be in charge. People will just repeat these kinds of lines as if they're in a television show. The the way that I look at the world we live in, and you guys can comment below on what your take is in this thought process. I love these thought exercises. What is it that you believe community to be? In other words, if we were doing a quiz and I'm asking you a question, I would like for you to tell me, what is it that you think mankind as a community actually is, right? In other words, do we think that people should just live individually? For example, like everybody just take up a post out in the woods and just live? Or do you believe that people should work together, build homes, build communities, build cities/villages? How is it? Just a question, people in general, how do we believe a community operates? Like, how do we think the world began to operate the way it does? I know. That question could fill a book. But I mean, just in general, do we as individuals, do we really believe that we have no rules to live by, that we can just be free to do whatever in the world we want to do, that you can just come and go however you wish to come and go, wherever you wish to come and go? Do we really believe that all of these things were arbitrarily, magically, for example, put into place? Right? So with that question in the back of your mind, you may have to come to grips, sadly, with the knowledge that some of these people who in our world, in our existence, rise to the absolute top of financial independence. They own and control all of our resources. They own and control our lands and where things go. They own and control our armies. That this may not be purely by chance. It may not actually be by accident. So, even though there are discussions about abolishing the monarchy and abolishing these leaders, there may be, in my imagination, there may be a structure that exists that perhaps was not put in place arbitrarily, and that may in fact be why it holds us in its grip. Now, it will change a little bit. It fights amongst itself, right? Because how many of these monarchs are constantly, in the past, of course, like in the 1200s and the 1300s, these kingdoms are in war and fighting against themselves. But once it all filters down and filters out, the average everyday person just waking up, trying to make sure they gather food for their family and have clothing for their family, their lives stay pretty much in the same struggle. So why is that? I would like for any of you who have an interest in trying to pontificate on that question to throw up in the chat, if you like, what your thought process might be. In the meantime, I'm going to jump back in here and see who is in the chat today. Look, guys, I love it when people are in the chat. I do. I really, really do. Look, we also have Happy New Year from Joyce Anderson, 7241. Thank you for being here, Joyce Anderson. I appreciate you being here. Again, Super Squatties on deck, people. It's important to know. Now let's see, we have a quick comment here that says, my rule is don't type anything that you are not willing to say to someone's face. You know what? That's a very good rule. It really is. Because you have so many what we call keyboard warriors, I guess is what they say. These folks will say anything online. And then they're angry that thousands and thousands of people are yelling at them. And Lorna Williams also says, I believe Harry Wells was used because I heard it was not announced ahead of time he was going to be there for security reasons. So the announcer didn't have time to research how he is addressed. I think that's excellent. You're probably absolutely correct. You know, he was up there probably just hanging out, going to play, going to watch in the crowd, and then all of a sudden he shows up on the field. Lorna Williams, you're always saying, this is so cute. Adam and Eve bit the apple and greed and money followed. Most of the people who got to the top did so by shady and illegal means. Ex Musk's ideas original are Nicholas Tesla's. Nicholas Tesla, look, I am a huge fan of Nikolai Tesla for a whole bunch of reasons. The work of Nikolai Tesla, okay, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. This is like hidden information. Write it down real quick. But I was a student in physics, and I was trying to decide what I was going to major in. Engineering was one of those courses. And studying the work of Nikola Tesla was one of those huge things to do. This man had, of course, discussed that he obtained his knowledge in a very spiritual way. Now, here's what's interesting about characters like Nikola Tesla, and he is not the first and only. He worked in multiple diverse areas, right? And I know I digress. So his main emphasis of work was energy, right? Providing energy. That was in the electrical world, electromagnetics, things like that. And all of these forces that were natural sources of energy. So his work is still under the table. And the information, of course, just like anything in our world, if you hold the information or have access to the information, then that makes you pretty much the power broker of it. So you are correct. The part two, those who are current day, trying to work out methods to utilize the work that he has done. Excuse me, I've got hiccups, people, like a little 2-year-old. People who are using his work are going to try and monopolize off of his work, whereas much of his work was an attempt to establish free resources. In other words, resources that could be accessible by anyone. But those who are currently running this world that we live in, free or the, I would say, control of resources, no matter where they come from, is their sole intent, right? They have no intention of ever allowing anyone on this planet to exist without extracting some form of remittance. It is truly, it's truly a very sad and disturbing manner in which we live, right? At the moment, the only thing that we seemingly can obtain without remittance is exposure to sunlight. Even the air and water is becoming, is moving into an area where if you want it to be clean and usable, you're going to have to pay, right? So it's one of those things. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Nikolai Tesla. I'm a fan. I'm a super fan. But we'll have to talk about more of the type of things that he was involved in, and the fact that probably many of us, on a daily basis, if we had the time and the means to investigate some of the things that he worked on and in some of the ways that he worked, we too could probably benefit on an individual level from much of his work. So just keep that in mind. Yes, you're correct. Where was I? Y'all got me all off track. But anyway, the request for the monarchy to abdicate and to just disappear, those cries are growing in the UK media and in the UK media tabloid world. People are making that call, and you better believe this is not what they want to hear in the established realms of the monarchy, nor monarchy adjacent. That is why that machine to keep down, to destroy, and to constantly place in your mind that anything that steps outside of the dotted lines of what the monarchy's rules are, anything that steps out of those lines is to be destroyed, right? And that is why there is a constant recycle. I mean, we've had a 10-year recycle of the same news articles, right? About who is the target. The greatest target is Meghan. Why? Because if they destroy Meghan, they can automatically reel back in under their control Prince Harry. Or if they destroy Meghan, then they can prove that Prince Harry, in your mind, should be dismissed. They have already taken him from a place of honor and grace and placed him in the bucket of he's being controlled. His wife is got him controlled, or she's doing something to him, which is what? It's straight out of the 1300s that his wife must be a witch, right? So they have done nothing new. They have simply placed in recycle for the past 10 years the same attacks that machine continues to run and has run forever and ever, which is why they brag about their institution being in place for thousands of years, right? Because their rules are the same. The only thing that I believe, and of course it's because I'm a prayerful woman, right? The only thing that I believe might be swinging the doors in a very strange way is that we're living in a very unprecedented time. Now, I know people have said that every generation, people say that we're living in unprecedented times. But I believe that this generation is truly living in that. Now, what will come of it, I have no idea. How it will shake out, again, I'm not sure. I know that whenever these times of upheaval occur, whatever things are going on, that people will struggle and that there will be hard times, right? These times when there are difficulties all around, no one is missed. Nothing is left off the shelf. People are always swept up. And so, since we are in unprecedented times, you have to prepare yourself and those around you within the means that you have. Prepare for what you can. You know? If you are, if you think that you may need to travel, you may have to prepare for travel. If you think you may have to stay where you are, you have to prepare to stay where you are. You know? So it's it's weird, is the crazy word which I do not like to use, but it's a time that could be at its flourish. It could flourish and bloom and become extremely prosperous. And it could be a time where we might go through some challenges and upheavals to get there. But either way, you must prepare. Do your best and work towards those things that you would like to see in your life. That is key. Do not ever forget to step forward, move forward, and continue to press forward in the things you would like to see in your life. So remember, the posture of the critics will stay the same. Now we're going to go into 2026, and if you thought that just because these people are struggling with their own situations, and you would think they would spend more time fighting off those who are coming for them, the monarchy. You would think they would spend more time trying to make sure they do the right thing in and around their own people. You would think they would not have time to still turn around and try to find methods to attack Harry and Meghan. Oh, but you would be wrong. You see, that machine is in place. Now, we're also looking at 2026. What people are doing is they're lifting up the hood, throwing back the curtain. Because what came out in 2025, and I hope you guys get a chance to dance back over there and do that quick reveal. What we found out in 2025 is that many of the people who were on the troll farms and many of the people who had their troll accounts were being brought out into the sunshine where they could not hide and that they cast no shadow, right? Many of these people were being found out, plus people were tracking the money, and it was becoming apparent that the dollars were being spent by specific organizations. So in December, for example, many of the troll accounts, many of the bot accounts, many of the anti-Meghan accounts, they started to dwindle and they started to shrink, probably because the noise of her As Ever products and the noise of her production with Love Meghan began to drown them out, right? All of their, she's whiny, she's this, she's that. Oh, she just makes people angry. All of those words that they use that don't have any real meaning. All of those things started to dwindle. Why? Because she was doing well. Because she is continuing to press forward. Because they are continuing to walk up the hill. So it became obvious that if you were cut a check, $7,000 here, $7,000 there, to say something negative on your podcast, then that's what was happening. Now, while this was going on, here's the funny part. The usual suspects, I'll show them for you here in succession. The usual suspects that had no reason to speak about Meghan in any way. I mean, when you think about what their podcasts are about, this person's podcast is strictly about politics, right? They're generally talking about politics, left and right wingness here in the United States. So why in the world would the name Meghan Markle fall out of his mouth? What would be the reason for that? But he gently places her name in a sentence at a lecture given at a podium with all cameras on him. Somehow her name was dropped out to the audience in a negative connotation, right? Somehow her name was pressed out by this character who has absolutely nothing to do with anything UK royal or the monarchy. So don't you wonder why that was? Well, don't wonder, because these people are bought and paid for, right? They're bought and they're paid to do what they do. Same here. What does this person do for a living? interview political figures. That is their job. Their job is to sit down and call out people and talk about politics. Occasionally, she throws out a convenient piece of information about racial history, which makes it very clear that she has either read nothing, studied nothing, or knows no one that could help her clarify what she's trying to get across. You know, she's the character that continuously gives mythical characters racial identity, right? Interesting. But for whatever reason, Meghan Markle's names fell out of her mouth again in December. So I'm assuming the last checks being written to get yourself some Meghan Markle dollars must have been written in December, because within a 3-day time period, all of these individuals had the same commentary. At least I have to give it to this one here, who is on your screen. I'll say her name because she has her own show, Kenzie Schofield, which, you know, she's a crying royal watcher. She's always in tears for everything bad that happens to any of the royals in the UK. Okay? But yeah, she's still on the payroll to watch everything happening in California and to report back when she realizes that she knows nothing and that she's behind the wheel. She doesn't realize it until after the thing has happened because she's not invited to the table. And then lastly, my all-time favorite, this is a very interesting character because evidently she has spun off to make money on the opposition, but she still had time to drop our wonderful name of the family. I believe it was Meghan Markle solo. She dropped her name again. This all happened in December, folks. All of these people dropped her name in some sort of negative connotation. And you had to ask yourself, well, that was odd, right? How did she come up in a conversation with all of these people within a week's time? Somehow at every speech and in every podcast, the name Meghan Markle somehow fell out of their mouth. Well, that's because checks were written, right? Everybody received a coin to have something negative to say about Meghan because she is how you make your money, right? And then lastly, now this person did not have a podcast, and I know you all are familiar with the wonderful Dr. Sophie Shanduka. But here's what December brought for this wonderful piece of information, that she's out fundraising now online. Remember, after having mentioned in her wonderful sit down on the UK tabloid show with another individual who is, of course, a recipient of an MBE, how she pontificated upon the fact that Prince Harry is not the means of fundraising for the organization, that he in fact was a hindrance, but somehow she's putting out a request for fundraising online. Isn't that interesting? And folks, I would like you to see that this is what is left of the board for Sentebale. Okay? So get a look-see at that. This is the remaining members, at least listed on their website, as the active board of Sentebale. Keep that in mind. Remember, Prince Harry was a hindrance for them, and the presence of Meghan was disruptive. Okay? And now people are wondering, how are they going to raise funds to support this organization? Crazy. Listen, guys, I want to thank you all for spending some time here with me this Sunday morning. I am so glad that you came here to hang out with me a little bit. And just as a last minute, I'm going to see, let's see if we got any final comments here. Okay, she said Adam and Eve. Yeah, we did read that about Adam and Eve and the apple. Oh, yeah. And you remember, oh, yes, yes, yes. Kenzie still has not explained to my satisfaction what she was doing when she was hired for a P. Diddy party. Well, remember, not only was she at the party, but there was also another comment about an article written, or a article written that was highlighting people and basing their ratings on who was most despised or disliked, and somehow P. Diddy rated as not as despised as Meghan Markle. And this article, which they thought, I guess, was going to be funny, I guess they thought people were going to have a great time with that article, it just drew attention to the fact that they had written something so sleazy. And then they wanted to go back and redo this article. Oh, but it's too late. You see, and the fact that anyone would compare just a working person, right? Just compare any random woman, any random mom, any random wife to a person who has a criminal offense to the level of these characters that are criminally charged, the Prince Andrews, the P. Diddy's, the Jeffrey Epsteins, to actually put the names of just a husband and wife, right? Just the mother and father of two children. Just two people who decided, yeah, okay, we could work with you, but we'll decide we're going to go our own way. Just to place these people for making that choice in the same category as high-end federal criminals for crimes that are so debauched, and you place their names in an article trying to make them equal, that alone is why people look at the organization across the water and decide it should be dismantled. I agree. It's ignorance at its best. But what I want you all to think about, even in the dismantling of, is to think about, why in the world do they exist in the first place? How did they even come to be? How did something so, I guess, sublime is a good word to use, get itself so integral and intertwined in the control and the manipulation and the construction of the world's everyday lives? How did that happen? And why is it maintained, right? Now, with that being said, guys, as I get ready to wrap up, I want to tell you all, you know what? I thank you all for being here and supporting me. So look, give yourselves a round of applause. I appreciate that you stuck it through. And as I always do, I like to close out with my thoughts from some scripture. Now, I did read this scripture earlier in the week when I was trying to present it on the other cast, which I couldn't hear and no one else could. And eventually I am going to take that down off my website. But what I would like to do is to ask you, please, please join me in kind of contemplating this scripture that I found. And yes, again, it is a repeat. And remember, I'm not recruiting you to any cult-like activity. It's just that when I read certain Bible scripture, they make me think about things in a different way. So listen, we're going to delve over into Revelations. This is a place that most people do not like to go. But listen, the great dragon was hurled down, and the ancient serpent, called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. Keep that in mind, where all of this resides, right? Revelations 20:10 said, "And the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of burning sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet had been thrown. They will be tormented day and night forever and ever." Now, just think about that. I know these are the words of Revelation. This is about a time, perhaps, that is to be revealed to people at some point. But the point being that all of this negativity was heralded right down here. We're in and around and among it, right? But we can still pay attention and try to move forward with our lives, understanding that it exists and knowing, hey, we might have to navigate around it. And Mark 3 says that, "And if Satan rises up against himself and is divided, he cannot stand. His end has come." So always try to keep your eye on what's going on amongst those that are notoriously in bad faith operation. Because you know what? Hopefully, if they compete against each other and fight against each other, that they will destroy themselves so that everyone else can rise. I want to leave you all with those type of thoughts. Keep positive. Keep yourself going and moving forward. And I appreciate you all being here with me. I know I took too long, but I'm going to try to do better, and hopefully I will be online more and get myself to that monetized world. So listen, please like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit those notification bells, because from what I hear in the YouTube streets, sometimes people have subscribed to something and then a month or so later, they're just automatically unsubscribed. So come back and subscribe again and again just to make sure you stay subscribed, and tell all your friends to chime in and listen as well. Why not? Go ahead and subscribe before I start attaching money to this endeavor. Okay? I am so thankful that you all are here. Enjoy the rest of your day.